Hey guys, tonight we're diving straight into something strange, because what you're about to wear might be the most dangerous outfit in history. You're standing in front of a gilded mirror, somewhere in the corner chamber of a candlelit chateau. It's your first royal dinner. Your maid is already at your side, whispering instructions like she's training you for battle, and maybe she is. Because this dress, this weapon disguised as elegance, isn't just silk and whalebone, it's a test. You lift one leg to step into it, and immediately your balance shifts. The skirt is heavy, heavier than you expected. Like someone stitched sandbags into the hem, it sways awkwardly, wide and stiff, pushing back at your knees as you try to find your footing. Your maid pulls it up over your hips and begins to lace the corset tight, then tighter. She keeps tugging until you feel your ribs pressing together like bookends. You want to tell her to stop, but she doesn't need you to say it. She sees it in your eyes. And still, she nods and pulls again. Breathe shallow. That's the trick. You try to lower your arms, but the puffed sleeves catch under your collarbones. The bodice forces your back straight, your chest out, your neck lifted as if awaiting a blade. You're not dressed. You're armoured. And yet, you're more vulnerable than ever. The bodice is lined with whale baleen. Not metal, not wood, but the stiff, flexible plates from a whale's mouth. Apparently some genius decided this was the perfect material to hold a woman's torso still. Not support. Still. You're not meant to bend, not meant to twist, definitely not meant to breathe like a normal human. Just stand there, quietly, beautifully, unmoving. Your lady-in-waiting stands back and claps softly in admiration. "Perfect," she whispers. "You look like you belong." You try to nod, but your neck protests. The gown's high collar brushes under your jaw like a warning. Later, at the feast, the room is hot, overheated by bodies, by fire, by tension. You're sweating, but the fabric is not kind. It clings, it itches, it absorbs nothing. A lady passes out near the roasted pheasant platter, and the footman carries her out like it's routine. It is routine. Women faint here the way candles flicker, constantly. But no one opens a window. That would disturb the tapestries. As the evening stretches on, you begin to understand this isn't fashion. This is control. This dress was never made for you. It was made about you, for others to see, to admire, to critique. You're no longer a person. Your silhouette, texture, posture. From across the room, a baroness leans in and says, "She's got the right figure for court. Good bones." You think of the whale. You wonder if it had good bones too. Later that night, when the dress is unlaced, you collapse backward, gasping. Your spine cracks audibly. Your ribs expand with a pain that feels like drowning in air. You're free, but bruised. Your waist is ringed with red marks. Your arms are sore. You touch your sides and realize the corset has left ridges like tree bark across your skin. You won't sleep well tonight. Not because the mattress is hard or the room is drafty, but because you now know what it means to be admired at court. It means being compressed into shape, fitted into expectations. It means learning how to disappear inside beauty. And the worst part? Tomorrow's gown will be even heavier. Morning comes with aching ribs and a silent dread as your maid enters, arms full of linen and starch. "Today's gown is different," she says. "It's simpler." But you quickly learn that simple in court fashion is a lie told with lace. You lift your arms, and she slides the underlayers over your body. First the shift, then the padded roll, then a quilted petticoat. These are supposed to soften the silhouette, but they mostly feel like insulation stuffed beneath your skin. The final layer is the outer gown, stiffer than yesterday's, stitched with more bones, more threading, more purpose. Your spine is pulled straight like the drawstring of a bow. No slouching, not even in your thoughts. As she fastens the final hook, she murmurs an old superstition. "A lady who breathes too much will never marry well." You want to laugh, but your lungs won't let you. You step out into the corridor, and your skirt brushes the stone walls on either side. The dress is too wide for the hallway. You have to turn sideways to walk, which causes your bodice to twist slightly. and the boning digs cruelly into your hip. You imagine court architects redesigning entire castles just to accommodate skirts like this. Perhaps they did. At breakfast, you attempt to sit on a velvet-cushioned stool. Bad idea. The hoop beneath your gown snaps against the edge. You nearly slide off. 2 footmen rush over, steadying you like a swan about to tumble off her pond. No one speaks of it. Embarrassment is always absorbed into silence here. The woman beside you is wearing a gown with silver-threaded embroidery so delicate it looks painted on. But when she lifts her hand to sip her tea, you see a line of bruises under her wrist where yesterday's bodice bit too deep. You meet her eyes briefly. No words exchanged, just recognition. This is what beauty costs. A younger girl across the room fidgets under her collar. She's only just been fitted for her first real court gown. She's flushed, sweating, eyes darting between servants and nobles like prey among wolves. Her mother, sitting next to her, leans in and murmurs something that makes the girl stop moving entirely. You remember being her. You remember that strange, twisting sensation of pride and panic the first time someone told you looked presentable. Behind the banquet, servants whisper about the old duchess who fractured 2 ribs when her corset snapped during a carriage ride, or the girl who tripped on her hem during a bow and was stepped on by another noblewoman's crinoline, crushed under silk and bones and ceremonial indifference. And still, the dresses get heavier, taller, wider, like arms reaching farther into a performance no one dares to rewrite. It occurs to you that the word fashion once meant to shape or mould. You now understand it fully. This is not just an aesthetic. This is moulding, with fabric, with rules, with pain. By the time the sun sets, you've smiled 43 times. You've not eaten enough to count as a meal, and your waist has spent 14 hours in a squeeze tight enough to deform your ribs if done daily, which it is. When your maid finally unlatches the hooks and begins to peel the dress away like armour after battle, you exhale in broken pieces. She helps you into a night shift, plain and cotton soft. No boning, no lace, just cloth. It brushes your skin like mercy. And for the briefest moment before sleep you wonder, who designed this? And did they ever wear it? The next morning greets you not with birdsong but with clanging, metal against tile as your maid drags something into the room that looks more like scaffolding than clothing. You sit up slowly, muscles still tight from yesterday's confinement, and blink at the contraption. It's a hoop skirt, she explains, or more precisely a cage crinoline. It looks like a bird cage turned upside down, made from concentric rings of steel connected by vertical ribbons. It's meant to hold the volume of your skirt without requiring 20 layers of petticoats. It's modern, your maid chirps, so much lighter than before. You nod, unsure if the word lighter means what she thinks it does. You step into it, lifting one leg like a flamingo, careful not to catch your toe in one of the hoops. As she fastens the waistband and begins to layer the outer fabric over it, the air beneath the dress grows cavernous. You can feel the empty space swirling around your knees. It's like wearing a bell, a silent, swaying architectural bell. When you walk, the structure glides slightly ahead of you. Your feet don't lead the dress, it leads you. The floor-length hem moves with a delay, lagging just enough to snag on thresholds, or brush over dog bowls, or knock candlesticks from low tables. And still, everyone compliments the silhouette. So elegant, they say, so graceful. You feel more like a chandelier. At first, the space inside the cage feels liberating. You can breathe, you can move your knees, but then come the side effects. Sitting becomes complicated. You can't simply lower yourself. You must back in slowly, angle your knees, and make sure the metal hoops fold safely above your thighs. The wrong stool can lead to a collapse, and a public humiliation you won't live down for weeks. You are now, quite literally, a hazard in tight spaces. Doorways must be entered sideways. Hallways become obstacle courses. One sudden turn and you've swept an entire tea table into the fireplace. The crash echoes. Everyone turns. You smile, stiff and silent as your maid rushes to apologize. Outside, the wind is your enemy. Even a gentle breeze lifts the hem into disobedience. You clutch at the fabric, trying to keep your dignity from billowing into the hedges. You pass another woman, struggling just as fiercely. You share a tight smile, both of you battling the air like tiny ships in a storm. "There's a rumour," whispered among the kitchen staff, "about a girl who stepped too close to an open flame and couldn't get away in time." The steel hoops caught fire from underneath. The layers of fabric acted like a chimney, sucking air upward. She went up in seconds. Your maid tells you it's just a story, a silly legend. But the next time you walk past a lit candelabra, your hands tighten around your skirt. At dinner, a nobleman tries to speak with you and gets too close. His boot catches on your hem, and for one awkward moment he's tangled inside your crinoline. He steps back, flustered, brushing at his coat. "Pardon me," he mutters. You smile. You don't tell him that he's not the first man to get trapped in your cage. By nightfall, your hips ache from the pressure of the waistband, and your shins are bruised where the hoops bumped your legs. You're told you'll get used to it. That grace takes practice. That discomfort is elegance. You lie in bed, eyes tracing the wooden beams above, and wonder how something designed to lift the dress away from your legs somehow weighs heavier than everything that came before. It's early afternoon when you're summoned for a garden promenade. The crinoline is adjusted, restarched, and resecured. Your outer gown today is silk taffeta, heavy as gilt and twice as loud. Every step rustles like wind through dead leaves. The sound follows you, reminding everyone, especially yourself, that you're dressed for spectacle, not for comfort. You descend the stairs slowly, lifting your skirts to avoid catching the lowest hoop. Two maids follow with silent coordination, adjusting the train, smoothing pleats. You wonder when walking became a choreography, and how long until someone trips the beat. In the garden, other women shuffle about like floating tents. Their dresses balloon around them, creating a kind of forced isolation. No one can get close. It's oddly convenient. You can't whisper, you can't huddle. Every conversation is done with distance, projection, and restraint. The hoop becomes more than fashion. It becomes a social moat. A sharp gust picks up and you grip your skirt again, forearms tense. The fabric balloons outward and lifts slightly, revealing a scandalous flash of ankle and the pale curve of your calf. A few nobles gasp theatrically. One old countess squints and mutters, "Shocking!" You blush, furious at the breeze. It wasn't even your fault. The ridiculousness becomes clear when a servant attempts to pass by with a tea tray and has to step into the hedges to avoid your path. You offer an apology, but he only bows, eyes down. You realize how many people are forced to move around you, like your furniture with opinions. It's not admiration, it's avoidance. And yet, this dress is a status symbol. The wider the hoop, the wealthier the woman, or so they say. It requires space, servants, and specific furniture. A peasant couldn't even sit in one without hitting a barn beam. The dress declares, "I do not labour, I do not sweat, I do not walk fast." You begin to understand why queens wore cages on their hips. It wasn't just vanity, it was performance. Inside, you pass a mirror and pause. Your reflection startles you. You don't look like a person. You look like a sculpture. Smooth, towering, shaped like a tulip in full bloom. You press your hand to your waist and feel only fabric, boning, metal. Somewhere underneath your body is still there, but it's irrelevant. No one sees it, least of all you. Your maid tells you about another woman, Lady Eleanor they call her, who once fell down a staircase in full crinoline. The structure bent awkwardly, pinning her legs beneath, and she lay there like a beetle on her back until two men hoisted her upright. She never attended another public function again. At supper, you managed to squeeze into a specially designed chair with no arms. Crinoline approved, someone jokes. But when you try to reach for your goblet, your skirt presses against the edge of the table, keeping your torso just far enough away that you can't lean forward. You feel ridiculous, like a puppet, too dressed to function. Later, as the servants undress you, The sound of steel hoops clinking on the floor is jarring. It echoes through the dressing room, sharp and final. You look down at the collapsed cage and feel the ghost of it still wrapped around you. Your body remembers what your eyes no longer see. You slip into a cotton robe, soft and thin, and step outside for air. No one notices. No one sees you without your armour. For once, you feel the breeze touch your legs directly. You close your eyes, and for that brief moment you feel like a woman again, not a structure. The morning sun barely warms the stone walls, but your dressing room is already stifling. The fire has been lit not for you, but for your stays, the corset that must be pliant before it can harden around your body. Your maid holds it up, steaming slightly. It looks harmless enough. Soft pink satin, decorative stitching, tiny brass eyelets. But you know better now. Today is a ceremony day. That means full tight lacing. You raise your arms. She slides the stays around your torso and begins threading the laces like she's binding a package for delivery. Slow at first, then firmer. With each tug your ribs contract. Your back straightens involuntarily. You can feel your lungs shrink, as if there's suddenly less air in the room. The rhythm is familiar now. Pull, not, breathe, pull again. It doesn't matter how many times you do this. It never stops feeling like a betrayal. Of your body, of your instincts. Your ribs don't belong in this shape. Your waist was not made to mimic a wasp's. And yet, it's expected. A waist above 20 inches is matronly. A flush face is vulgar. A visible breath, undignified. You're not supposed to look alive. You're supposed to look sculpted. By the time she finishes, you're no longer sure if you're upright from posture or pressure. Your stomach is flattened to the point of nausea. Breakfast is out of the question. Even tea is risky. Liquid has nowhere to go. You take a step. Your spine is a rod. Your shoulders pulled slightly back by the way the corset flares at the base. The pressure is constant, not sharp, yet just steady, like someone is holding your waist in a firm, unyielding grip, all day long. On your way to the antechamber, you pass a cluster of ladies in similar attire. Their movements are ghost-like, gliding, slow. No one turns too quickly. It's not grace, it's survival. One woman pauses beside you, her hand trembling slightly as she steadies herself on the wall. She's pale, the kind of pale that suggests she hasn't had solid food in days. 3 inches off, she whispers with the trace of a smile. Can you tell? You can. Her waist looks like a child's. Her face looks like she might faint at any moment, and that somehow is the goal. The whispers have names for it. Tight lacing, waist training, the feminine struggle. There are girls who sleep in their corsets, who tighten a 1/4 inch each week until their bones shift. It's not a myth. Doctors have documented it. Rib cages bent inward, livers bruised. One surgeon found a stomach so compressed it resembled a twisted length of sausage. But no one speaks of that in drawing rooms. You sit on the edge of a settee, very gently, just enough to rest your thighs. Your spine cannot slouch. If you try, the corset will dig like a blade between your shoulder blades. You sip water, just once, then stop. The discomfort flares too fast. A young girl, no older than 14, walks past with her maid. She's wearing her first real corset today. Her steps are small, uncertain. Her eyes flicker with that strange mix of pride and pain you know too well. She'll learn, or she'll faint, probably both. In the mirror, your reflection is breathtaking. Small waist, lifted bosom, statuesque silhouette. You look exactly as you should, exactly as they want you to. But beneath the satin, your ribs throb like drums in a too tight case. You press a hand to your side gently. Nothing gives. You manage to hold your composure through the first few hours, just enough conversation, just enough smiling. But by late afternoon, the corners of your vision blur slightly. It's the not eating, or the not breathing, possibly both. There's a couch nearby, but lying down in a corset is dangerous. The boning will press into your back, your ribs, your lungs. You'd sooner pass out upright than recline wrong and puncture something important. So you stay standing, fingertips brushing the edge of a marble mantelpiece for balance, smiling at nothing in particular. You hear someone say, "Her waist is divine," and wonder if they mean you. You're not sure if it's a compliment or a diagnosis. Behind you, two older women gossip over a fan. One recalls the Countess of Brighton, who had her corset taken in during labour. "So the doctors wouldn't see her shapeless," one laughs. You feel cold, even as your skin burns under your dress. It occurs to you that no one sees corsets for what they are, slow violence wrapped in ribbons. By the time your maid leads you back to your chamber, your lips are dry and your head is spinning. She speaks softly, knowing the signs now. You've trained each other, like nurse and patient, or soldier and squire. She begins to unlace with a speed born of worry. The laces loosen, and for a brief second, your lungs try to flood with air. Too much, too fast. You double over, coughing. The release is almost worse than the pressure. Your ribs creak audibly. It takes minutes before your breathing steadies into something like normal. You sit, braced, while your maid dabs sweat from your neck. "You should eat," she murmurs. You nod, though food still feels impossible. There's a bruise forming on your lower ribs. She helps you into a night shift, leaving the stays lying limp across the chair like a creature that's lost its power. But you know it'll be back tomorrow. Same pressure, same silence. You remember a story your aunt told you about a girl who was so determined to achieve a 16-inch waist that her corset snapped during a dance. She died within the hour. "Heart gave out," they whispered. But no one blamed the fashion. They blamed her constitution. That's always the story, isn't it? If you faint, it's because you're weak. If you complain, you're dramatic. If you resist, you're rebellious. Never once does anyone question the laces. And yet, tight lacing remains a mark of elegance. The smaller the waist, the higher the praise. Entire marriage proposals hinge on inches. At a recent gathering, you overheard a man boast, "I want a wife with a neck like a swan and a waist I can wrap my hands around." You looked at your own hands that night. They don't even meet around your wrist. You lie in bed now, finely flat, the weight of the day pressing out of your bones. Your breath returns in slow, shallow waves, but your muscles still twitch, remembering the squeeze. You close your eyes. You dream of running barefoot, lungs full, dress torn and loose behind you. You wake to the sound of your maid boiling water for the next corset fitting. You don't realize how truly absurd your dress has become until you try to sit down and fail. The gown today is less about pain and more about dimensions. It stretches nearly 4 feet in diameter, the sides puffed out like a pastry dish. This is the pannier style, they told you. French, elegant, a marvel of balance and symmetry. What they didn't mention is that you can't fit through a normal door. You're helped into it piece by piece. First the understructure, 2 massive hoops extending sideways from your hips like twin boat sails. Then layer after layer of fabric, embroidered overskirt, stiffened underskirt, velvet train, hand-stitched ruffles. You stand in the centre of it all like a human centrepiece, arms outstretched, unable to see your own feet. The moment you try to turn, you realise your body hasn't been made larger, just wider, a walking rectangle. From the front, you look delicate. From the side, like a collapsing tent. Downstairs, your entrance is a full production. Servants clear a pathway. Guests shift to make room. You inch through the archway sideways, sucking in instinctively, though your waist is already bound to the width of a wine bottle. As you pass through the main salon, your pannier knocks a porcelain dog off a console table. The sound it makes when it breaks is sharp and tragic. You freeze. A dozen heads turn. Your hostess smiles with an effort. "So sorry. That piece had no business being in the way." She waves off the servants to sweep it up. You murmur an apology that sounds like a cough. You're guided to a chair. Except, of course, there is no chair wide enough. Not one with arms. Not one with pride. Someone brings a bench instead. No back, no sides. Just a flat surface. You perch awkwardly, hands folded, dress draped stiffly over your knees like a stage curtain. A gentleman tries to sit beside you, but your pannier prevents it. His eyes flit over your silhouette, then away like he's trying to solve a riddle. "Remarkable construction," he says finally, as if admiring a ship hull. The worst part isn't the size, it's the distance. You can't lean forward, can't whisper to a friend, can't even pick up your fan without a full upper body tilt that feels like preparing for liftoff. It's isolation disguised as splendour. A footman discreetly offers a refreshment. You decline, not because you're not thirsty, but because lifting a teacup through 2 layers of sleeve and an outward flared bodice is nearly impossible, and heaven forbid you spill. There's no changing into another gown today. You hear someone behind you whisper about a duchess who once lit her pannier on fire by backing too close to a candelabra. "It's spread sideways," the woman giggles, "like toast under the flame." Everyone laughs delicately. You force a smile, fingers gripping your fan until the spines creak. Later, as the event wears on, you find yourself wedged between 2 chairs and a doorframe. You try to twist, angle, step back. Nothing works. You're stuck. A servant tries to help by lifting the gown, but the layers are too heavy. It takes 2 people, 2 full minutes, and a pair of blushes to get you through. And still, no one questions the dress. They question the doorway. The evening carries on, but your patience begins to fray. Your gown rustles with every move, like dry leaves following you across marble. You're beginning to understand why no one in the portraits ever looks relaxed. They weren't poised by choice. They were simply stuck. Someone compliments your embroidery. Another comments on the delicate lace trim along the hem, lace you haven't seen since bending over far enough to view your own skirt would require acrobatics. You thank them, of course. What else can you say? In the corner of the salon you spot a girl, barely 17, wearing a scaled-down version of the same style. Her pannier is smaller, her fabric simpler, but the effect is the same. She can't move without turning sideways. She giggles nervously every time she bumps into something, which is often. The older women laugh indulgently. "Ah, the clumsy years," someone says, as if navigating your own clothes is a learned behaviour, like fencing or embroidery. You manage to make your way to the grand hallway, where the floor slopes slightly near the stairs. A small misstep, a slipper landing unevenly, and suddenly your balance shifts. The dress lurches. The weight pulls you left. You twist instinctively, trying to catch yourself, but the pannier keeps going, dragging your centre of gravity with it. Your maid is there in seconds. Her arms steady you as the world stops tilting. You haven't fallen, not quite, but it was close. The kind of near miss that leaves your heart racing and your breath shallow. You clutch the banister and force a smile at the watching crowd. "Just a bit dizzy," you murmur. That's the only excuse anyone accepts. Exhaustion. Faintness. Not poor engineering. Once in your chamber, the unfastening begins again. Layers removed one by one like shedding armour. As the pannier finally collapses onto the floor with a dull metallic thud, your hips feel suddenly naked, unsupported, almost too light. The air against your legs feels indecent. You sit on the edge of the bed, your thighs pressed together awkwardly, reacquainting yourself with your body's actual width. You recall something you overheard weeks ago. A servant, folding gowns after a ball, muttering, "They can't even hug their own children in these." At the time you'd laughed, but now, arms free, skirt gone, you let your hands rest over your stomach and wonder if it's true. Some women sleep in panniers, or at least in the underframes. They say it helps maintain posture. One duchess apparently believed slouching in the night would lead to slumping at court. You wonder if that was her idea, or someone else's rule. You run your hand along the folded metal frame beside your dressing stool. It looks harmless now, like a bird cage after the bird has flown. You lie back in bed and exhale deeply, your first full breath in hours. You pull the sheets up and feel them settle against your legs, not over a structure. It's intimate, startlingly so. The gown is in the wardrobe now, pressed, hung, revered. Tomorrow you'll wear it again. But tonight, You remember what it's like to take up only your own space. You're standing in the ballroom now, and it's not the candles or the crowd that makes you nervous. It's the fact that you can't feel the edges of your own body. The gown you're wearing tonight is one of the widest yet. Its sides stiffened with baleen and linen, the shape reinforced by layers of fabric so thick you can hear them when you move. Your silhouette is immaculate, perfectly oval, perfectly absurd. The room is crowded. Heat swells from bodies and hearths, trapped beneath velvet and hair powder, and with every step you feel the risk grow, not from the fashion itself, but from what surrounds it. Flame, wax, friction. You've heard the rumours, of course. Everyone has. The whispered stories of crinolines catching fire at parties, of ladies twirling too close to candelabras and becoming in seconds walking torches. You always assumed it was exaggeration, until tonight. You pass a mirrored column and glance sideways. Your skirt flares behind you like a sail, graceful but wild. A breeze from the hallway lifts it slightly, and that's when you feel it. A sudden wave of warmth at your hem. Your heart skips. You spin slowly. Nothing. Just the glow of candlelight licking across polished floors. But your body is on alert now, your every movement cautious. The gown makes a sound like dry parchment every time it sways. You're one misstep away from disaster, and the dress makes it impossible to tell where you begin and the room ends. Your maid had whispered about it this morning while dressing you. "The fire at home hall," she said quietly, lacing your stays. "They found her shoes under the piano. Nothing else left." You didn't ask for more. In the ballroom, you keep to the centre of the room, away from the walls and their sconce-lit menace. But even here, there's risk. Someone backs into you, their elbow catching your sleeve. You stumble a half step, your skirt brushing a footman's tray. A wine glass tips. It doesn't fall, but the splash reaches your glove. You want to go home. Instead, you smile. A musician nods at the conductor. The music shifts. A faster piece. Partners are chosen. You're offered an arm by a viscount who smells of powder and port. You accept. And now you must dance in this thing. You move in a slow circle, each step measured, timed to your dress rather than the music. The crinoline beneath sways like a pendulum. The viscount keeps his distance as etiquette demands, but also because your dress gives him no choice. You are untouchable. Untouching. Then it happens. Across the room, a young woman brushes past a column too closely. Her skirt catches on the corner of a candlestick holder. It snags. She doesn't notice. The candle tilts. It wobbles. And then, in one silent breath, flame touches fabric. At first, no one reacts. The fire is so small it looks like part of the gown's gold embroidery. Then it spreads. Fast. Too fast. A scream. A chair falls. The music stops. You freeze. The woman panics, grabbing her skirts, which only fans the flame upward. A man rushes forward, cloaking her with his coat. Smoke curls toward the ceiling. The fire is out in under a minute, but the smell lingers. Burnt silk, burnt hair, burnt fear. She's led out sobbing, her corset singed through, her gloves blackened, and still the party continues. They open a few windows discreetly. The smoky air is cleared with fans and rosewater. A servant scatters lavender on the tiles. The musicians resume playing, one tune lighter, as if nothing has happened, as if a woman hadn't just nearly died in front of them. You remain standing, hand still poised on your dance partner's arm. The room turns again. The skirts flare again, and no one mentions the smell of scorched fabric still clinging to the drapes. Later, in a quieter corner, you find yourself pressed beside a marble column with two other women. Both are older, their eyes ringed in grey coal, their voices hushed with experience. "It happens every season," one murmurs, sipping sherry. You'd think someone would ban open flames at these things. "Oh, they tried once," the other replies. "But the Queen said the atmosphere wasn't the same without candlelight." You glance at the flickering wall sconce nearby, its flame curling like a tongue, far too close to the hem of your embroidered overskirt. You shuffle sideways, just enough to feel safe. They go on, recalling more incidents, one in Vienna, one in York, another at a garden party where a guest went up like dry kindling during a fireworks finale. You're not sure which is worse, the fact that these stories are known, or that they're told like gossip, not warnings. A chill settles beneath your collarbone. Not from cold, but from the quiet realization that in all this grandeur, your life is the most flammable thing in the room. You retire early, claim illness. Your maid helps you undress quickly, her fingers trembling more than yours. When she lifts the gown from your shoulders, you feel your skin sigh with relief. Beneath the crinoline, she finds soot along the hem. Just a little. A reminder. A warning. She sets the dress aside carefully, as if it might ignite again at any moment. You sit on the edge of your bed in your linen shift. The air is cool against your knees. Your hair, freed from its pins, falls in heavy waves down your back. You inhale, deeply this time, and taste only air. No rose water, no smoke. For a moment you consider what it would be like to live in simple clothes, to move through a doorway without turning sideways, to sit without bruising, to dance in a circle without thinking about circumference. There's a small fire in the hearth now, burning low. It gives off warmth without reaching too far. You stare at it, unmoving. Tomorrow you'll wear the gown again. A different one maybe, but just as wide, just as flammable, because that's what's expected. Because being admired is worth the risk. Because no one will question your ashes if you're beautiful while you burn. You lie back in bed and close your eyes. You dream of wool dresses and bare feet, of fields without fire, of dancing in a circle where no one ever catches flame. The next dress they lay out for you looks deceptively soft. Layers of gauze, pale organza, a floral sash. But beneath the delicate frills lies something far more dangerous. The stiff netting of a full crinoline, reinforced with cords and narrow steel bands. You've learned not to be fooled by prettiness. Your maid doesn't speak as she ties you in. She's too focused on precision, positioning the frame correctly, smoothing the underskirts, securing the bodice so it rests just under your ribs. You try to breathe evenly. Today is the ambassador's garden party. There will be walking, and walking in a crinoline is an art form. Outside, the garden is lovely in the early light, hedgerows pruned into impossible geometry, gravel paths lined with forget-me-nots, trellises drooping with roses. You step forward slowly, feeling the crinoline sway, each ring of the hoop shifting like a rotating gear. A single misstep and the entire system could tilt off balance. You're not alone in this dance. Around you, a dozen women move like ships in a harbour, wide, slow, majestic. Their gowns rise and fall with each breath of wind. It should be beautiful, but you're too focused on the mechanics of movement. The wind is stronger than you expected. At the far end of the path, a gust catches your hem and lifts it sharply. You reach down instinctively, trying to keep it pinned, but the structure beneath betrays you. The fabric sails outward, and suddenly you are airborne, not in flight but in panic. The crinoline tips, your ankle turns, and your body pitches sideways. You fall, not gracefully, not quietly. You crash into the gravel like a dropped chandelier, skirts spilling, arms flailing, ribs still bound in corset that prevents a full breath. A moment later you feel hands grabbing your sleeves, your bodice, lifting you upright. You're on your feet, but unsteady, humiliated. Your palms are scraped. Your pride, worse. A circle of onlookers pretends not to stare. One offers a parasol. Another murmurs something about slippery stones. No one mentions the fact that your dress is simply too big to be worn safely outdoors. You want to cry, but instead you laugh softly. A hollow little sound that escapes before you can stop it. Later, in the shade of a yew tree, your maid checks your wrist for bruises. "You're lucky," she whispers. "I've seen worse. Lady Pembroke cracked a rib last June. Still hasn't healed." You wonder if it's luck to fall and survive, or just another chance to do it again. Someone nearby is retelling an older story. a tragedy, a fire, a crinoline, a girl who couldn't escape. You've heard it before, but this version includes a detail you'd never heard. She'd tried to run, and her skirts turned inward, catching her ankles. She fell into the flames. You look down at your own skirts, so stiff, so circular, and realize they trap as much as they protect. They create space, but also isolation. A fence, a blindfold, a risk. Back at the manor, you pass a laundry servant boiling water. Hanging near her are discarded frames, broken hoops, burned hems, fabric torn from accidents no one dares speak of twice. She nods to you as you pass, and in that nod there's no deference, just recognition. She's seen what these dresses do, so have you. Evening falls, and with it comes the hush of preparation. You've changed gowns again, this one slightly smaller but no less dangerous. As you pace your room, the skirts swish gently, but the memory of the fall clings to your body like a second corset. Tight, silent, unforgettable. You sit on a cushioned bench, carefully positioning the hoops of the crinoline to fold just so. It's become a ritual now, arranging your limbs around your clothes rather than letting your clothes serve your body. Nothing about these garments is passive. Every inch demands negotiation. Your maid helps you into your evening gloves. As she does, you glance toward the hearth. The fire there is modest, well trimmed, but all you can see is risk. You can't help it anymore. Every open flame is a threat, every hem an accelerant. There's an older lady at tonight's gathering, Lady Wentworth, who once survived a dress fire. She wears a veil now, always. The right side of her face is puckered, shiny. She speaks in half smiles and short phrases. At dinner she leans close to you and murmurs, "I used to dance near the candelabras too." Then she turns away before you can reply. You don't sleep well that night. You toss, haunted by the sound of the flames, of the laughter that tried to cover them, of the silence that followed. The next day word arrives from London. Another dress fire. This time a visiting dignitary's niece. She stumbled on a staircase, candles along the landing. Gone in moments. A telegram of condolence. A polite pause in court appointments, and then life continues. But not for her. You ask your maid, quietly, why don't they change the design? She shrugs, and the sadness in her expression gives you the answer. Because fashion isn't about safety, it's about statement. And the louder the dress, the more silent the woman inside becomes. In a quiet moment that evening, you walk to the edge of the gallery. You're alone. No candles, no eyes on you. You lift your skirt and reach beneath, fingers brushing the thin steel bands of your crinoline. Then you do something bold. You unclasp the inner hoop. It falls limp, the frame collapsing inward like a snapped skeleton. The dress loses its perfect circle. It droops, softens. It looks wrong by every standard of the court. But it feels right. You take a step, another, and suddenly you can walk at your own pace. You can turn without catching a table leg. You can kneel if you wanted, though you don't. Not yet. Your maid finds you minutes later, startled. "My lady, your frame." You lift your chin. "I know." She doesn't argue. She says nothing, just helps you fold the deflated cage neatly, as if it were laundry and not rebellion. That night, you walk freely through the corridor, your gown swaying softly around your calves. A passing footman glances up, momentarily confused by your silhouette. But he doesn't stop you. You sleep deeply for the first time in weeks. No panic, no tightness, no sparks. And in your dreams, you are not burning. You are walking barefoot through grass, your dress brushing wildflowers. No hoops, no hems, no cages, just air. It's morning again, and despite the softness of yesterday's defiance, you're back in full dress. A ceremonial visit demands it. This time, the corset is tighter than ever. Your maid says nothing about the crinoline you chose to leave folded by the fireplace. Instead, she brings out a new bodice, stiffer, narrower, cut high under the ribs with panels sewn for maximum compression. You lift your arms automatically. The routine is familiar now. Shift, corset, hooks, laces, gasping stillness. But today something is off. Halfway through the lacing you feel it. An ache deep beneath your left side. Not the usual soreness from posture or bruising. This is sharper, internal. You wince, and your maid pauses. "Too tight?" she asks gently. You nod. She loosens a bit, but not much. There's no time. You must be ready. You must look the part. You always must. Downstairs, the room is warm and filled with the scent of violets and sugared fruit. There are guests from abroad, diplomats and titled ladies, all arranged like painted figurines in lacquered boxes. Everyone is smiling, but the smiles are practiced, hollow, yours included. As you cross the marble floor, you feel the ache deepen. Your steps are shorter now. A cold sweat pricks the back of your neck. You pass a table and steady yourself for a breath. Then another. It doesn't help. Your lungs can't fully expand. The corset prevents it. Each inhale is a fraction of what it should be. You blink, trying to clear the sudden fog in your vision. And then, quietly, terribly, you crumple. You don't fall gracefully. There is no poetic sway, no fainting swoon. Your knees hit first. The pain radiates upward. Your side twists. You slump to the floor, skirts spilling around you like a collapsed pavilion. Gasps, voices, hands. You feel none of it clearly, only the pulsing in your ribs and the struggle to draw in air through a throat that feels like it's closing. Your maid rushes to your side. Someone loosens the bodice. Someone else calls for smelling salts. You are dimly aware of being lifted, carried, your body stiff but useless. In your chamber, the doctor arrives quickly, not for the first time. He mutters something about compression injuries, shakes his head, says the liver's been displaced again. Perhaps the stomach too. Rest, he says. No corset for a week. A week? Your maid looks startled. But she's to be presented on Sunday. The doctor's mouth flattens. Then she'll do so without a corset or not at all. Later, after they've gone, you lie propped up on pillows. Every breath still hurts, but at least it comes. You touch your side and feel the strange bulge, soft tissue where it shouldn't be, organs nudged into foreign spaces. You think of the countless times you've heard of girls fainting at court, of young women carried out in silence. You'd always assumed it was from heat or nerves, but now you wonder how many of them had bodies folding inward, crushed from the inside out. That evening a note arrives, a handwritten apology from the hostess. "We hope you'll recover quickly. It was such a shock." At the bottom, P.S. You looked exquisite before you fell. You close your eyes and laugh, a breathless, bitter laugh that no one else will hear. The next day you stay in bed. The corset lies draped over a chair nearby, innocent as ever. Its satin ribbons gleam in the light, its boning curving like a question mark. But you know better now. There is nothing soft about it, nothing gentle. It is a jaw, and you are inside it. Your maid tiptoes around the room, unsure of what to do with herself. She fluffs pillows, adjusts the curtains. At last she speaks. "You'll still want to be fitted tomorrow, won't you? For Sunday?" You don't answer. Your side is too sore to speak for long, but your eyes say it all. Not yet. Maybe not ever again. She leaves you be. Later that afternoon, you hear voices downstairs. A few guests have come to call. You remain hidden behind your door, unseen, unshaped. For once your body is only yours, uncompressed, unpresented, unoffered. You take small, cautious breaths, deep enough to fill your chest, not so deep that it stretches the bruised space inside you. You marvel at the difference, the absence of pressure, the freedom of fullness. You press your palm against your ribs and feel their natural curve, the gentle swell where your stomach has returned to its rightful place. It's strange to think that just yesterday, these same organs were being forcibly rearranged, all for the illusion of elegance. You think back to a story you once heard from a retired court dressmaker, a quiet old man with crooked fingers and a voice like dried leaves. He spoke of a girl who'd worn corsets since childhood. By 17, her waist was small enough to encircle with both hands. But when she married and became pregnant, her body couldn't expand. The baby had nowhere to grow. She died in labour. No one blamed the corset. That story stayed with you. Not for the tragedy, but for the silence that followed it. Everyone spoke of the girl's beauty. No one questioned the thing that killed her. You wonder how many deaths were dressed in silk and labelled accidents. How many women gasped for breath behind their smiles. How many still do? The week passes slowly. Your body begins to heal. You take short walks through the gallery in a loose linen gown. No stays, no structure. The marble floors feel colder now, but honest. Each step is a reclaiming. On the 6th day, your maid brings in a new corset. A softer one, she says, designed for recovery. She sets it on the dressing stool and steps back. You don't move. Instead, you reach for your wrap, rise from the chair and walk out to the balcony. The sun is low, casting long golden lines across the garden. You breathe deeply, once, then again. Behind you, the corset waits, but you don't return to it. You let the wind press against your shift, your body outlined not by steel and thread, but by who you really are beneath it all. For the first time in weeks, you feel whole. You aren't a silhouette. You're a self, and no ribbon-laced trap will make you forget that again. The court's appetite for beauty doesn't slow just because your ribs have bruised. The invitations keep arriving. Teas, processions, charity luncheons where the tea is lukewarm and the charity thinner than the cucumber sandwiches. You've recovered enough to stand again, to wear something more structured. But today, you make a different choice. No corset, no crinoline. Just a modest gown with a softer waist and sleeves that allow for actual motion. Your maid hesitates as she helps you dress, but she doesn't protest. She's seen what rebellion looks like when stitched quietly into linen. The dress fits differently, not in the way it hugs or reveals, but in how it lets you move. When you step into the receiving room, the difference is immediate. Heads turn. Not because you're dramatic, but because you're less. The absence of exaggeration is jarring in a place addicted to silhouette. The Countess of Lydale, draped in violet satin and yards of lace, eyes you from across the room. Her corset is cinched within an inch of breathing, her skirt so wide she must anchor one arm on the back of a chair to stay upright. She lifts her glass and offers a dry smile. Gone simple, have we? You return the smile. Just hungry for air. She snorts. Careful, my dear. The more you breathe, the less they notice you. And maybe that's true. But as you sip your tea, without strain, without shaking hands, you start to realise how many things you've given up in the name of being seen. The tray comes around. Sugared fruits, candied violets, paper-thin wafers. You take one of each. No one stops you. No one comments. You chew slowly, thoughtfully, amazed that the simple act of eating feels radical. Beside you, a young woman in her first season watches closely. Her own gown is a confection, tight-laced, pale blue, stitched with pearl. Her waist is painfully small, her eyes wide and glassy. She hasn't touched her plate. She hasn't moved in 10 minutes. You lean slightly, whispering, "You can breathe. No one will scold you." She blinks, startled, and then exhales, just once. A shallow, grateful breath. Across the room, a gentleman begins speaking loudly about a cousin who ruined her figure with pastries. Laughter erupts. Eyes flick toward the food, the women, the bodies. You don't laugh. Instead, you rise, slowly, confidently, and cross the room with a plate in your hand. You eat a second candied plum, deliberately. It sticks to your teeth and tastes like freedom. Behind you, the young woman begins to eat as well. Later, in the corridor, a friend pulls you aside. "People are talking," she whispers. "They say you've changed, that you're less refined." You nod. Maybe. but I'm also not starving." She says nothing, but as she walks away, you notice she's loosened the ribbon at her collar. Small victories. When you return to your chamber, your maid is folding laundry. The corset lies untouched, its laces draped over the edge of the chest like a question you've already answered. She glances up. "How did it go?" You smile. They noticed. Later that evening you stand before your mirror again. No maid, no audience. Just you and the soft rustle of your dress as you breathe freely. Your reflection doesn't strike like it used to. There's no impossible silhouette, no wasp waist, no floating skirt engineered by wires and whalebone. Just a body. Yours. You turn sideways. It's strange at first to see your actual proportions. No padding, no cinching. The familiar curve of your belly, the softness of your arms, things long considered flaws here, now feel like truths returned to you. A knock. Then the door opens gently. It's the young girl from earlier, the one you whispered to at tea. She holds her gloves in both hands, twisting them nervously. "Lady Ashcombe said you might have a different kind of gown," she asks. You nod and wave her in. Her eyes take in the room with its quiet rebellion. No corset stand, no rigid dress forms, just shelves lined with simpler gowns, softer fabrics. She touches the sleeve of one gently. "I didn't know these existed," she says. "They're not made for everyone," you reply. "Just for those who ask." You help her out of her bodice. It takes longer than it should. Her laces are dug in deep, her chemise soaked in sweat at the ribs. When she finally steps free, she gasps, hand pressed to her side. Her waist is marked with red channels like riverbeds after drought. She looks down at herself. "Do I still look proper?" You smile. "You look alive." The two of you sit by the hearth, each with a mug of warm cider. The silence between you isn't awkward. It's thick with knowing. You're both tasting something unspoken, something richer than ceremony. Relief. She eventually speaks again, voice soft. "They say beauty hurts," you nod. "But no one ever says who it's hurting for." She sips, then asks, "Will it always be like this?" You consider the question carefully. "Maybe not," you answer. Every time someone says no, even quietly, it changes the shape of the world a little. She sets her mug down and smiles. Not a practiced court smile, but a real one, lopsided and warm. "I think I'll say no more often." Later that night, after she's gone, you return to your mirror once more. You're still dressed simply, but you look taller somehow. Not from the height of your hair or the lift of your shoes, but from the weight you've stopped carrying. You're not shrinking to fit the frame anymore. You're growing beyond it. And you begin to wonder just how many women are out there, hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone else to take the first loosened breath. You blow out the candle, climb into bed, and let the softness of your shift settle around you. No laces digging in, no boning pressing down, just linen and skin, just you. And in the quiet dark you allow yourself something rare. You fall asleep full. The next gown is beautiful. That's what they all say. It arrives in a large chest wrapped in velvet and trimmed with silver braid. Inside, nested like a jewel, lies the court train for the spring ball. It's cream satin with gold embroidery, hand-stitched down the back in swirling vines that end in embroidered peacocks. When your maid lifts it from the box, it takes both arms. It's heavier than it looks. This is the kind of dress made not for walking, or even for standing, but for being seen. The train alone is over 8 feet long. It requires 2 attendants. 3, if you plan to move more than 10 paces at a time. When it's finally laid out behind you, it looks like a tapestry. You're not sure if you're wearing a gown or a rug, and still, they say it's stunning. You begin the process of putting it on just after lunch. It takes most of the afternoon. The underlayers go first. Corset, chemise, modest hoops, then the skirt, layered in stiffened silk, then the overdress. The bodice has to be sewn shut at the back. There are no buttons, no laces, just tiny gold stitches which your maid snips open again at night. Then comes the train. It is not attached, but looped through hidden tabs and secured with delicate gold pins. When it's finally in place, you cannot move. Not really. You can stand. You can pivot slowly, like a statue on a lazy Susan. You can nod, but walking, only with assistance, and you'll need it. Before the mirror you look like something from a painting, regal, glowing, impossibly composed. But beneath the satin your shoulders already ache. Your feet are throbbing inside slippers too narrow for comfort. The train pulls against your hips, tugging your balance just slightly off. You compensate by locking your knees. The journey to the carriage is a parade in miniature. 2 attendants lift the train just so, keeping it from dragging through the corridor. A 3rd watches for snags or wind. By the time you've climbed inside, you're sweating, but you dare not lift your arms to fan yourself. The sleeves are too tight. At the palace, a servant opens the door and stares, not at your face, but at the fabric. You know that look. It's not admiration, it's calculation. He's thinking about how many stairs you'll need help with. Inside, the ballroom is vast and candlelit. The train glows under chandeliers. You step carefully, feeling the weight slide behind you like a tide. Guests part before you, not out of deference but to avoid being caught beneath your wake. A baron tips his head. I see they've crowned you tapestry of the season. You smile tightly. You've heard worse. Someone behind you steps too close. Their shoe catches the edge of the train. You lurch slightly, the pull sharp across your back. You recover, barely. The baron doesn't notice. He's already turned to someone else. You spend most of the evening near a window where there's space to spread the train in a long arc. It pools around you like spilled milk. No one dares approach too closely, not because they fear you, but because they fear stepping on you. You sip half a glass of champagne. That's all your bodice allows. You've never felt more decorative or more distant. The hours drag. You don't dance. You can't. Not with 8 feet of fabric trailing behind you like an anchor. Not with arms too snug to lift. Not with shoes that pinch at the toes and arches and leave your feet screaming in silence. Instead, you stand. That's what women do in gowns like this. Stand, smile, drift. You turn slightly to speak to a lady beside you and hear it. A soft pop. A stitch gives way near your hip where the train is attached. The fabric sags faintly, only by a breath, but you feel it. A crack in the armour, a shift in balance. Your maid will need to repair it before the end of the night, or the entire weight will drag the back of your dress off kilter. You try not to move. A servant walks past and nods. Your train, my lady. May I help lift it? You nod gratefully, and he gathers it like a net, respreading it in a softer arc behind you. There's no shame in accepting help here, only necessity. Everyone knows that these gowns are impossible alone, but there is still the question no one asks. Why must they be worn at all? You overhear an older woman muttering, they used to embroider lead weights into the hem to make the train fall correctly. You believe her. You feel like you're wearing bricks stitched in gold. Someone else recalls a distant cousin whose gown was so elaborate she missed her own wedding breakfast, too long getting dressed. They brought the food up to her, they chuckle. She ate in gloves so she wouldn't stain the lace. You wonder if she tasted anything at all. The worst of it is how the train follows you, not like a pet, but like a shadow. You move, and it drags behind. You turn, and it swings late. You stop, and it keeps breathing for you. The dress does not yield. It commands. It remembers. It resists. By the end of the evening, your lower back feels like it's splintering. You shift your weight from foot to foot, seeking relief. None comes. The train, beautiful as it is, has become a burden you can no longer ignore. And yet, the compliments keep coming. You wear it so well. Like a queen in a portrait. Statuesque. You want to say, statues don't bleed. But instead, you nod and thank them. When you finally return home, it takes your maid nearly an hour to unfasten everything. The train comes off last. It droops into her arms, heavier now with dust and fatigue. You exhale as if you've just been released from something. Not cloth, but expectation. She helps you into your night shift. Your body aches in places you can't stretch. You lower yourself into bed like you're 80 years old. Your feet are blistered. Your spine feels pinched. You lie there, staring at the ceiling, thinking about how many women were praised not for what they did, but for how well they carried the weight. You close your eyes, and for the first time you picture a ball where everyone wears what they please. Some in silk, some in linen, some in nothing at all, and no one stares at their hems. The next gown is breathtaking, or at least that's the word the seamstress uses as she tightens the final hook. Breathtaking. You want to laugh at how literal it feels. Today's bodice is stitched so tightly it feels less like clothing, and more like stitching you into a roll. It runs high up your neck and cuts in just beneath your arms. The sleeves are narrow, the waist sharp. There are no buttons down the front, no escape hatch, just fabric, fit, and silence. You glance down at the front of the bodice and realise something else. There's no room to move, not an inch of stretch. You are locked in. Your maid says it looks like a second skin, and again you almost laugh. A second skin wouldn't itch. A second skin wouldn't bruise. A second skin wouldn't whisper, "Don't speak too loudly. Don't eat too much. Don't raise your arms." You walk stiffly to the mirror. The shape is perfect, by court standards. High neckline, snug shoulders, impossibly small waist, flared hips. You don't look real. You look illustrated. The kind of woman someone might paint, not actually converse with. But it's not just the fit that weighs on you today. It's the stitching, the literal stitching. You asked once how these gowns stay so perfectly moulded to their wearers. The answer? Sewing. Some of the tighter evening bodices are sewn shut once worn. Small, invisible stitches along the back seam. A finishing needle is passed quickly by the lady's maid, pulling the fabric taut so it doesn't gap. There's no undoing it alone, no slipping out of it. You go in with help, you come out with help, and in between, you don't dare exhale too deeply. Today is one of those gowns. You feel the prick of the needle at your spine as your maid finishes. "Don't move," she warns gently. You don't. You can't. Once sewn in, your body isn't your own anymore. It's a silhouette. Downstairs, the reception is already underway. Laughter, strings, crystal clinking. You descend slowly, every step measured. The bodice holds you like a vice. You don't sit, you perch. 1 inch too low, and the seams might split. The governor's wife greets you with a sharp eye and a sharper smile. "You're stitched up like a gift today," she says. "They'll be unwrapping poems about you for weeks." You smile back. Not because it's funny, because you can't do anything else. Midway through the evening, the thread begins to bite. You feel it along your ribs, a tug just beneath the shoulder blades, a seam too tight, a breath too deep. One of the stitches pulls, not enough to tear, but enough to warn. You whisper to your maid. She nods and vanishes. You stay upright, back stiff, neck high, like a swan waiting for the lake to freeze. You can't leave, not yet, not while they're watching. Later, in the drawing room, you hear another girl being sewn into her bodice. The sound of the needle slipping through fabric, the soft tetch of thread pulled taut. She winces. The maid tells her, "You'll thank me when they turn to look." And maybe she will. Or maybe she'll remember this moment, the pricking, the silence, the ache, and wonder if being stared at is worth being sewn into silence. When the evening finally ends, you can't move without assistance. You stand frozen in the centre of your room as your maid prepares the scissors. There is no way to remove this dress gently. It must be cut open, one tiny stitch at a time. The sound of each thread snapping is barely audible, but you feel every one. Like undoing a cage, like splitting a sentence back into words. When the final seam gives, the bodice relaxes against your skin, and your shoulders drop with a quiet sigh of relief. You breathe, fully, painfully. Tiny marks dot your back where the stitches pulled too tight. Red grooves from the seam's pressure. Bruises already forming. You touch them and flinch. The cost of the silhouette is written on your body, in lines no one else will ever see. As your maid lays the open gown on the table, it collapses in on itself like an empty husk. Elegant, beautiful, lifeless. You wonder how many women were sewn into shape and then praised for being still. Across the room, you catch sight of the ledger. It's not an official court document, but every household keeps one. The garment record, a log of dresses worn, which events they appeared at, which jewels accompanied them. Notes in careful script. Ivory silk with high waist, 18 compliments. Blue taffeta crushed at hem, noted by Viscount F. Even your injuries are logged. Tight shoulder, bruising at ribs, acceptable. Future iterations to widen sleeve panel. You stare at that line, acceptable. Not painful, not dangerous, just acceptable. It dawns on you that your body is being measured not for comfort or health, but for how well it holds the illusion. If the silhouette survives, the woman inside is expendable. You walk to the mirror and stand bare-shouldered, arms crossed. Without the gown, you are no longer a symbol. You're just a figure in linen, quiet, whole, mortal, a knock. The young lady from last week, her waist still red from her first real corset, enters with hesitation. She holds a gown over her arm, one with a back seam already half-stitched. "I'm supposed to wear this tomorrow," she says, "but I don't think I can breathe." You gesture to the chair. "Sit." She does. You take the gown from her hands. It's beautiful, of course. Cream silk, narrow sleeves, high neckline. Meant to be admired from a distance, not survived up close. "Do you want to wear something else?" you ask. She nods. In the wardrobe, you find a softer dress, one that buttons, one that allows the lungs to fill, not compress. When she tries it on, her expression changes slowly, from anxiety to disbelief to relief. She touches her stomach. "I can feel everything, even my heartbeat." You smile. "Good. That means it's still yours." She laughs, really laughs, and the sound fills the room like light. Not hollow, not decorative, just human. That night, you write in your own ledger. Wore no stays, walked without pain, breathed all the way down. You close the book. Tomorrow someone will be sewn into their gown again. The tradition isn't ending, not yet, but tonight someone else breathes freely, and that too is worth recording. The morning paper carries a whisper of scandal. "Parisian fashions inflated beyond reason," the headline reads, followed by a smug account of a recent soirée where several ladies wore gowns with ballooned hips. Not panniers, not crinolines, but something new, something unnatural. You sip your tea and read on, intrigued. The writer is outraged, not by the size of the garments, but by what they suggest, that women might be mocking fashion itself, that they might be laughing at the expectations rather than bowing to them. That afternoon, the first of these so-called inflated gowns arrives in your city. You don't see it in a drawing room, you see it in motion, gliding down a stone promenade, worn by a woman with jet black curls and a glint in her eye. Her dress is the colour of champagne, with hips so outrageously wide it looks as if she's smuggling pillows under each side. Heads turn, gasps echo, but she walks on, unbothered. The whispers begin instantly. Is it satire? Is it foreign? Is she mad? You're not sure, but you're certain of one thing: she's enjoying herself. Later that evening, your seamstress arrives for a routine fitting. But instead of holding out the usual swatches and stencils, she reaches into her satchel and pulls out something different. A folded silk structure, pale rose in colour, shaped like a crescent moon with drawstrings at either end. "It's called a cauchette," she says, eyes sparkling. "Popular in Paris. You tie it under the hips. It gives lift, volume, drama." "And purpose?" you ask, arching a brow. She smirks. "And freedom. No hoops, no metal, just a joke stitched in satin." You hesitate, but not for long. When the fitting is complete, you stand before the mirror in your new gown. The inflated hips curve outward in soft, absurd arcs. They're not subtle, they're not restrained. But unlike the crinolines, they move with you. No more clanging hoops, no need for attendants to lift and carry. Just air, fabric, and nerve. Your maid is speechless at first. Then she bursts into laughter. "You look like a teapot," you grin. "Exactly." At the garden party later that week, you wear the dress. Proudly. The other guests freeze as you pass. You see it in their eyes. The confusion, the amusement, the discomfort. A man murmurs, "She must be French." A woman whispers, "She must be brave." You take a seat under a linden tree without needing to adjust a single hoop or ask for help. You cross your ankles, sip your cordial. You feel not dainty but powerful, not decorative but deliberate. Across the lawn, the girl you helped last week is wearing her own version. Slightly smaller, less daring, but the shape is there, the courage is catching. A dowager frowns and leans toward her companion. They look ridiculous. You look back over your shoulder and smile. "Perhaps," you say sweetly, "but at least we're sitting down." She goes quiet, and for the first time in weeks you get the last word. By the end of the evening, your hips are the talk of the garden. Not your opinions, not your accomplishments, just your hips. Exaggerated, inflated, unapologetically ridiculous. And you've never felt more subversive. Women approach you cautiously, as if your dress might explode. They ask questions, not out of admiration but confusion. Is it heavy? No, it's mostly air. Is it French? Yes, and maybe a little rebellious. You don't say it aloud, but you know what they're really asking. Is this allowed? And that's the point. There's no answer. The silhouette is strange. The intent is ambiguous. You're no longer a perfect hourglass or a perfect bell or a perfect swan. You're a question mark. And people don't know what to do with a woman who doesn't fit the mould, even when the mould is silk. You catch glimpses of reactions throughout the evening. A young girl stares at you wide-eyed as her governess pulls her away. An older woman smiles behind her fan. A footman mutters to another, "I hope this isn't the new fashion," while the other whispers, "I hope it is." Later, you find yourself standing near the hedge maze talking to the ambassador's wife, a tall, sharp-witted woman who always wears gowns 5 years behind the current trend. She eyes your inflated hips and asks plainly, "Are we laughing at them or with them?" You tilt your head. "Does it matter?" She smiles. "No, but it's nice to see someone having fun for once." Back at home, you peel the dress away and hang it carefully. Your maid looks at it like it might start dancing on its own. I don't know whether to call it silly or brilliant. You sit on the edge of your bed and stretch, delighted by the absence of bruises. "Call it both," you say. "It's allowed." She chuckles and begins brushing your hair. In the silence, you wonder what will happen next. Will this fad take root? Will others follow your lead? Or will the court clamp down, ban it, declare it indecent? It doesn't matter. Not tonight. What matters is the feeling that bloomed beneath that gown. The way you could move without strategizing every step. The way the fabric swayed instead of stabbing. The way your body felt not like a problem to be solved, but a thing to enjoy. You think about how many times you've been praised for wearing pain well, and now, for once, you've been noticed for something playful instead. Even in jest, it felt powerful. As you climb beneath the sheets, you imagine a ballroom full of inflated gowns, all bouncing and swaying like lanterns in the wind. The sound of laughter, not the nervous kind, but real, unguarded laughter, filling the air like music. You drift off smiling. Tomorrow the court may call it foolish, but tonight you sleep knowing you wore joy and made it fashion. The invitation reads an evening of refined company and light music, which you now understand is code for 6 hours of standing in tight shoes and pretending you don't need to pee. You've attended 100 such evenings, but tonight you dread it for a very particular reason. Tonight you must wear a bustle. It seems innocent at first. A soft, rounded pillow strapped low across your back, just above the tailbone. It's smaller than a crinoline, subtler than a pannier, but as your maid fastens it in place and begins layering fabric over it, skirts, ribbons, pleats, trim, you remember what this shape does. It doesn't make you wider, it makes you longer. From behind, your silhouette extends like a shelf, a decorative one. for admiration, not practicality. And the real problem with the bustle isn't walking, it's sitting. The first time you wore one, you discovered that too late. You tried to rest gently on the edge of a salon chair and found yourself sliding forward like butter off warm toast. The cushion pressed upward, dislodging your balance, threatening to tip you head first onto the floor. That time, you caught yourself. Barely. A servant's quick hand saved you from landing in a heap of ruffles. Tonight, there might not be such luck. The bustle itself is a marvel of engineering. Coils of wire sewn into the padding, designed to hold shape even under layers of heavy brocade. And yet, it moves when you move, bouncing slightly with every step like your own shadow wagging behind you. Some women add springs, hoping for extra lift. Others stuff theirs with horsehair or down feathers. Your seamstress once whispered that one client used books, as ballast. At the party, you make your entrance carefully, feeling the weight behind you shift with each step. The gown is lovely, pearl grey with a cascade of pleats tumbling from your waist to your heels. But you know the truth. All eyes are on the back. You pass through the room and hear the murmurs. She has good structure. See how it perches? Like a cake. Elegant. You feel like a display, not a guest. When you reach the settee near the hearth, you pause. It's too low, too soft. You'd sink and be unable to rise gracefully. Instead, you hover beside a tall chair with no arms, brace yourself and lower down with precision learned over months. Your bustle catches, tilts. You adjust, slowly, breath held, seated at last. Except now your back doesn't touch the chair. The bustle pushes you forward just enough to strain your lower spine. You cross your ankles and pretend to be relaxed, but every muscle is clenched in effort. Across from you, another woman is adjusting her own posture. Her bustle is larger than yours, almost comical in profile. She catches your eye and smiles faintly. "I can't feel my feet," she murmurs. You grin. "I haven't felt my knees in 2 hours." It's not just the discomfort, it's the awkward logistics. The bustle makes going through narrow hallways a gamble. It knocks small tables askew. It sweeps teacups off sideboards. And heaven help you if someone walks too close behind. You've heard stories, some real, some whispered. A woman whose bustle caught fire from a low candle, another who got wedged in a carriage door. One lady fainted trying to relieve herself while still strapped in. You believe everyone, because you've been there. By the 3rd hour of the evening, your lower back has begun to throb. The bustle, padded and springy as it may be, has forced your spine into an odd curve. Hips tilted forward, shoulders back. At first, you tried to compensate by leaning slightly, but now every attempt to adjust your posture makes the wires creak beneath your skirts. You feel like a coat rack someone draped velvet over. Across the room, a footman bumps into a passing lady, and her bustle knocks a tray from his hands. Glass shatters. Everyone gasps. The lady stands frozen as liquid seeps into the hem of her gown. She blinks once, twice, then walks away without a word, her bustle swinging side to side like an accusing finger. You overhear another guest joking, "We'll need warning signs soon. Wide load, do not reverse." More laughter. You smile politely, but inside something sours. These gowns aren't worn for delight. They're worn for discipline. Even humour has its place in the hierarchy. You excuse yourself to the powder room. A maid helps guide you through the narrow corridor. You must turn sideways to avoid scraping the walls. The bustle bumps a vase from its pedestal. The maid catches it just in time. Neither of you speak. Once inside the small room, the real challenge begins. There's no delicate way to manage this. You lift layers of skirts, fold them upward, try to reach beneath the bustle, but the padding blocks your arms. The wireframe doesn't yield. You twist. You squat, just barely. The angle is wrong. The gown is too tight at the knees. You nearly tip forward. You stop. Breathe. Rethink. Eventually you manage by unpinning the back layer entirely, letting the bustle fall forward like a flap. It rests on the edge of the basin, bouncing once before settling. You exhale with a kind of desperate triumph. This is not glamour. This is gymnastics in satin. Back at the party, you take your seat again, if it can still be called sitting, and listen to the string quartet play a soft minuet. Someone near you mentions a new trend from Vienna, detachable bustles, can you imagine? Another suggests collapsible ones for travel. You wonder if anyone will ever suggest no bustle. As the guests begin to trickle out, you remain a few minutes longer, standing now, pacing slightly, letting your body shift. At one point you stop near a mirror and glance over your shoulder. There it is, your silhouette, the high waist, the ballooned back, the trained precision. It's beautiful, architecturally at least, like a chair carved from marble, impressive, imposing, impossibly static. You turn away. Back in your room, your maid helps remove the bustle first. As she lifts it away, you feel your spine return to itself with a slow, aching sigh. You roll your shoulders, flex your knees, everything creaks. She massages your lower back with rose oil. Does it ever get easier, you ask? She shakes her head. But they say the silhouette is worth it. You lie on the bed and let the ache settle. You're not so sure anymore. You dream of running, not toward anything, just away. No bustle, no skirt, just wind on your legs and freedom in your hips. And in that dream, no one laughs. By now, you've mastered the rules. How to breathe beneath bone, how to pivot in hoops, how to sit with a bustle without toppling. But nothing prepares you for the rough. It arrives in a long, narrow box lined with tissue paper. Inside is a magnificent collar of tightly pleated linen starched until stiff, the circumference nearly as wide as your face. It looks more like a pastry than a fashion accessory. You stare at it. Am I meant to wear it, or serve tea on it? You ask dryly. Your maid chuckles but says nothing. She lifts it delicately and fastens it behind your neck. At once your head is forced upward. Your chin no longer rests naturally. It floats, awkwardly, like a marionette on invisible strings. The ruff cups your jaw and rises nearly to your ears. You feel like your head is being displayed in a frame. It's not just uncomfortable, it's isolating. You try to look down and can't. The collar presses into your throat. Any downward motion is met with resistance. You try turning your head. It squeaks against your hair. You are, for all intents and purposes, locked into forward-facing elegance. Very Elizabethan, your maid says approvingly, adjusting your earrings. You can't reply. You're too busy wondering how anyone ate, spoke, or so much as sneezed in one of these. Downstairs, the portrait gallery has several ladies immortalised in ruffs. You'd always thought they looked proud, composed, regal. Now you realise they were probably just uncomfortable. At the gathering that evening, several other women are in similar collars, some smaller, some even more absurd than yours. One woman's ruff flares out like the edge of a lily, so wide she has to drink her wine through a straw to avoid tipping her glass over it. You manage a sip of punch by turning your whole torso toward the cup, a full-body movement just to taste something sweet. Your throat begins to itch. You try to clear it, politely, quietly, but the ruff muffles even the smallest cough, trapping sound inside the pleats. You can't reach your neck, can't scratch, can't adjust your necklace, which has turned halfway around from the stiff jostling of your shoulders. You wonder if your head looks composed from a distance, or if you appear like someone about to sneeze into a doily. A gentleman approaches and bows slightly, peering past the ruff to make eye contact. "Exquisite collar," he says. "You look like royalty." You resist the urge to respond, so did Anne Boleyn, right before she lost her head. Instead, you thank him and shift ever so slightly to relieve the pressure under your chin. It doesn't help. You try to speak more during the evening, but every word feels trapped behind the ruff. Projecting your voice is hard when your jaw can barely drop. It's like talking from inside a snow globe. Another guest mutters to a friend, "It's all for show. No one can function in those things." You want to turn and agree, but you'd have to rotate your entire torso to face her. By the end of the night, your shoulders are sore and your ears feel hot. The ruff has chafed a faint red ring around your neck, like a punishment worn too long. Back in your chamber, your maid unfastens the clasp. As the ruff loosens and falls away, your head drops forward on instinct. The relief is instant, almost shameful. You rub your neck and whisper, "Never again." She nods. They say it's flattering, but it always feels like a collar to me. You stare at the ruff lying limp on the dressing table. A decoration, yes, but also a gag. The next morning, the faint ring of irritation around your neck has deepened into a raw groove. Nothing alarming, but visible enough to explain to anyone who asks why you won't be wearing a ruff today. You step out onto the terrace in a soft wool gown, unstructured, collarless, and, miracle of miracles, warm. The air is crisp, scented faintly with apples and cold stone. You tilt your head back to breathe it in fully, letting your neck stretch, unencumbered. The movement feels rebellious. Later, as you walk through the gallery, you stop again before those same portraits. Dozens of women stare back at you from their wooden frames, each face crowned by a stiff halo of lace. All had their heads clamped upward for hours, just to hold still for the artist. You look at one young woman, maybe 16, maybe 17, her face serene, her ruff so tall it seems to swallow her chin. You wonder what she thought while she sat there, whether she itched, whether she ached, whether she imagined tossing it all into the fire the moment the painter left. But history only records the posture, not the discomfort. You continue on. At lunch, you overhear a group of women discussing the return of ruffs. It's all about presents, one says. It makes you look composed, even when you're not. Another laughs, or when you're about to faint. You say nothing. You remember last night's sensation too clearly. The way your voice dampened against stiff linen, the way your peripheral vision narrowed, the way your thoughts began circling inward with every inch of restricted movement. In the afternoon, the court tailor arrives with a new collar design he calls a half ruff. Less fabric, less restriction, he claims. The suggestion of control without the pain. You try it on. It's lighter, true, but still high, still close, still intent on directing the position of your jaw. You remove it and hand it back. "I'll pass," you say. He frowns. "But it elevates the neckline. Everyone's wearing one." You shake your head. Then let them. That evening, while dressing for supper, you pause at the mirror. Your gowns hang in a row behind you, like silent witnesses, some with collars, some without, some sewn shut, some open at the front like a sigh. You pick one with a modest neckline, no lace, no bone, just soft folds that move with your breath, not against it. At dinner, a few eyes flick toward your neck. One woman raises a brow, another tilts her head, but no one says a word, and that silence, so often used to discipline, feels for once like permission. As the meal progresses, you lean in easily to speak. You glance around the table with ease. You laugh, and the sound carries, free of muffling fabric. Across from you, the young girl you once helped is wearing no ruff either. Her collar is folded down, her shoulders are relaxed. She gives you the smallest nod. Later, as the hall empties and you return to your room, you pass the ruff lying untouched on the side table. The candle beside it flickers gently. You lean over, blow, and the flame goes out. You awaken to the sound of wind. It howls past the shutters like a restless ghost, rattling the glass and tugging at the eaves. The storm has rolled in quickly, dragging rain across the rooftops and scattering leaves through the courtyard. You sit up slowly, muscles still sore from the previous night, and already dread the idea of leaving the room. But the carriage is waiting, and the gown has already been chosen. Today is a church service, formal, stiff, and crowded. You'll need to wear the navy silk with the extra panels, the one with the structured skirt and the long train. The weather, of course, is not a consideration. Your maid laces you in with practiced hands. You can tell she doesn't approve of the choice. "It's too full for wind," she mutters as she pins the underskirt in place. You don't argue. You never argue anymore. But inside, a quiet unease begins to build. The wind doesn't die down. By the time you arrive, the steps to the chapel are slick with rain. The carriage door swings open, and you step down carefully, holding your skirts close. But it's no use. The moment your feet touch the stone, the wind catches the hem. The skirt lifts, not a gentle flutter, but a full gasp of fabric. It bellows outward like a sail. You grasp at it, but the layers twist around your legs. A sudden gust drives the train up behind you. For one humiliating second, your underskirts flash white in the grey morning air. Gasps from behind, a stifled laugh. You clench your jaw and step forward, trying to ignore it. The chapel's arched doors are just ahead. But as you near them, you realise something terrible. The entry is narrow. Not narrow in theory, narrow in fact. The door was built centuries ago, long before fashion imagined skirts wide enough to seat 6. You approach sideways, pressing your back against the stone and shuffling. The fabric bunches, the train scrapes, and a pin snags in the doorframe. For a moment you're stuck. A footman comes to help. He lifts the train while your maid pushes the skirt from behind. You slip through with an audible thwump, cheeks flushed, head high. Inside, the air is cooler, quieter. But your humiliation lingers like damp fabric. The pews are already crowded. You spot your assigned seat, a narrow space between two dowagers whose own skirts overflow into the aisle. You approach cautiously, calculating the angles. There's no room. The bustle won't fold. The underskirt won't compress. You try to sit sideways, but the gown pushes your knees against the wood. You try to lean forward, but the high collar bites at your neck. Finally, you give up. You perch. Perching has become second nature. All weight in your thighs. No back support. No rest. The priest begins his sermon. You hear none of it. Your mind is focused entirely on your skirts, on how they've twisted, dampened, ballooned, betrayed you. You glance at the stained glass and wonder if the saints ever had to worry about mud-stained hems. At the end of the service, everyone rises. You do too, slowly, stiffly. The woman beside you leans in and whispers, "At least the rain's let up." You smile politely. You don't mention that your petticoats are soaked up to the knees, or that you can still feel the blush in your face from when the wind showed the entire congregation your ankles. The walk back to the carriage is short, but the wind hasn't forgotten you. It barrels down the stone path in gusts, tugging at your skirt like a mischievous child. You grip the fabric tighter this time, but the weight of the rain has changed everything. The silk clings where it once billowed. The underskirts are sodden and heavy, slapping against your legs with every step. You can feel cold water trickling down the backs of your calves. You don't walk so much as drag yourself. At the carriage door, another gust strikes. This time it's from the side. Your skirt snaps open like a fan, revealing the lining, the stitching, and, briefly, your ankles once again. A gentleman nearby turns his head, clearly flustered. You murmur something that resembles thanks to the footman as he helps you in. Inside the carriage, you slump onto the seat. Your bustle creaks under the weight of the wet skirts, forcing you to lean forward. There's no comfortable position. Everything sticks. Everything sags. The polished navy silk, once regal and severe, now clings to your knees in damp folds. Your maid sits across from you, quiet. After a moment she says softly, "When I was a girl we wore wool skirts in the winter. Nothing grand but warm, heavy but honest, and they never blew away." You look at her. "Were you ever cold?" "Oh, always," she replies, "but never like this." The carriage rocks on the cobblestones. You glance out the window at the puddled street, at the soot-grey sky, at a flower seller clutching her shawl against the wind. Her skirts are tucked neatly at her ankles, practical, modest, secure. Yours cost more than her entire stall, and yet they've offered you nothing but exposure and exhaustion. Back at the house, you step out onto the drive, shoes squelching in the gravel. The chill has seeped into your bones. Upstairs your maid peels the wet dress from your frame. The silk makes a soft sucking sound as it releases from your legs. You stand shivering in your chemise, arms crossed tightly. She brings warm towels. The fire crackles nearby, but it does nothing for the ache that's settled deep in your spine. She hangs the gown to dry, its train sagging in a long limp puddle of defeated fabric. You stare at it. Why do we still wear them like this, you ask, not expecting an answer. But your maid, always gentle, says, because looking like we belong has always been more important than feeling like we do. You sit by the fire and sip hot water with lemon. Outside, the wind continues. You listen to it rattle the shutters and think, not for the first time, that you were never meant to be built like a sail. You were meant to stand, to sit, to walk without apology. Tomorrow, perhaps, you'll choose a shorter hem, a narrower skirt, something that lets you run if you feel like it. And if the wind wants to chase you, let it try. You've been warned about shoes like these. They arrive in a velvet box nestled between sheets of rose-coloured paper, accompanied by a note from the dressmaker. To complete the ensemble, with admiration. That should have been your first clue. Shoes sent with admiration rarely admire your feet in return. Your maid helps you into them slowly. The silk is butter soft, dyed to match the pale lavender of today's gown. But it's the shape that causes the first wince. Narrow, pointed, barely wide enough to accommodate your toes. She fastens the tiny buttons along the side, and you can already feel your little toe folding inward like a pressed flower. They'll loosen with wear, she says too hopefully. You take a few test steps. The heel is modest, nothing dangerous, but the fit is merciless. With every shift of weight, the fabric pinches, and your heel slides slightly, trapped between the illusion of elegance and the edge of blister. Downstairs, the foyer is already filling with guests. Today's event is an indoor luncheon, light conversation and lighter food. You make your entrance with grace, chin high, back straight. But every step sends a jolt through your arch. The smile on your face doesn't quite reach your eyes. Within 20 minutes, you've discovered the hidden truth of the fashionable slipper. It is not made for walking. It is made for standing still and being admired. The moment you attempt movement beyond the length of a rug, the seams protest. A lady near the fireplace compliments the cut of your gown. You thank her, then shift your weight and feel a sharp rub along your heel. The blister is beginning. An hour in, and your feet are hot with pain. You've adjusted your stance 10 times, rotated each foot like you're performing some silent dance. You envy the gentleman in leather boots. You envy the servants in worn clogs. You even envy the barefoot children outside skipping stones across the garden path. A young man offers his hand to lead you toward the conservatory. It's only 12 steps, and yet your stomach tightens at the idea. You go. Of course. You always do. Inside, the air is scented with orchids and warmed by glass. He speaks of travel, of books, of horses. You nod, smile, shift from foot to foot, trying to hide the sting now blooming across the ball of your left foot. The pain is manageable. Manageable, but mounting. He doesn't notice. Why would he? You look composed, poised, pretty. By the time you return to the main room, you've stopped walking. You're gliding, feet barely lifting from the floor like a ghost in lavender. The floor is polished marble. You pray for no unexpected dips. Back at your chair, you sit slowly, folding your feet beneath the hem. The shoes feel tighter now than when you arrived. You consider removing them, just slipping them off for a moment, but you don't. Someone might notice. Instead, you press your toes gently against the insides, flexing just enough to make space, and breathe through the fire. Across the room, another woman shifts in her own chair and discreetly adjusts her slipper. Your eyes meet. Nothing is said. But the message is clear. We're all bleeding a little. You make it through the rest of the luncheon by sheer force of will and practice. You've learned to keep your expression still even as your toes scream inside their silken cages. You've learned how to fold one ankle over the other to relieve pressure, to shift your weight without attracting attention, to breathe through the pain. The worst part isn't the blisters blooming under the ball of your foot. It's the knowledge that the shoes were never meant to fit, They were meant to flatter, and flattering is rarely comfortable. As the guests begin to depart, your maid appears beside you like a shadow. She sees the tightness in your jaw and murmurs, "Slippers off, first thing upstairs." You nod once, curtly. Too much movement now might betray the cost of the day. The stairs are a battlefield. You cling to the rail, gliding one step at a time. Each rise stretches your foot against the narrow toe box, pressing the bruises deeper. In your chamber, she kneels before you, undoing the tiny buttons as gently as she can. When the first slipper slips off, you gasp. Not loudly, but enough. Your heel is raw. A crescent-shaped blister weeps at the back. Your toes are pink and pinched, curved inward unnaturally. The shoe, empty now, still holds the shape it forced upon you. The second slipper comes off more easily, but the pain is mirrored. You set both feet on a cushion and let them breathe, exposed, bare, free. Your maid soaks a cloth in rosewater and gently dabs the worst of it. You wince. "Worn once," she says softly, "and they already look like they've marched through battle." You stare at the slippers on the floor. They're beautiful, embroidered, precious, and absolutely useless. "Burn them," you whisper. She smiles. If only. That night you wear thick woolen socks and walk slowly through the gallery. Each step is tender, honest. The sound of bare heels on stone is oddly comforting. No rustle of silk, no click of heels. Just you, limping with dignity. You pause before another painting, this one of a woman seated in a garden, her feet daintily crossed beneath her gown. Slippers peeking out, pristine and untouched by the dirt of real earth. You wonder how long she had to stand before they allowed her to sit. Back in your room, your maid rubs salve into the worst of the blisters. You bite your lip and bear it. The sting fades slowly, replaced by warmth. She bandages your heels and slips a soft blanket over your legs. As you lie back, eyes heavy, she says, "In some places they bind the feet." You nod. "And here, we just stuff them." You both laugh, low and bitter. You dream that night of walking barefoot on moss, of tossing slippers into rivers, of leaving wet footprints on cold tile without shame. In the dream, no one looks at your feet, only at where they take you. You're barely a few steps into the drawing room when you realise something's wrong. The gown is perfect. Navy moire silk, gold beading along the bodice, sleeves tight to the elbow and flared to the wrist. It drapes just right. It shimmers. It fits. But the neckline plunges lower than any you've worn. Not scandalously low, not improper, just intentional. Cut not for comfort or modesty, but for attention, for exposure. Your maid fastened it with care earlier that evening. You'd watched yourself in the mirror, noting how the bodice created the illusion of lift where no corset could. But now, among company, you feel it differently. You feel it as eyes. They don't look at your face, not at first, not as long. You descend the steps slowly, aware of the cool air against your collarbones, the gentle dip where your chest begins. The fabric holds everything in place, but it holds just barely. Every breath feels like a negotiation with gravity. You greet the first guest with a smile. He bows, comments on the elegance of your gown. His gaze lingers for half a second too long. You ignore it. Then another, and another. Each greeting feels like being scanned, like you've become a reference diagram for flirtation, a contour to be measured in glances and innuendo. At one point, a man leans in and whispers, "They'll be talking about your bodice for days." You smile, but inside something curls. It's not the neckline itself that disturbs you. It's that it doesn't belong to you. Not really. It belongs to the room, to the gaze, to the silent rules that say a woman's value must sit somewhere between her collarbone and her waist. By the third conversation, you've begun to fold your arms. Not obviously, just enough to create a line of defence. But the bodice resists. It's too tight at the ribs, too shaped. Folding your arms pushes the neckline even lower. You uncross them. Let your hands hang instead. A lady in jade green passes by and nods toward your chest. Ah, designed by men, no doubt. You glance at her. Naturally, she chuckles. The tighter the fit, the less space for opinion. At supper, you try to eat delicately, but even chewing becomes an act of control. Any forward lean strains the bodice. Any laughter causes a shift. The boning beneath digs into your ribs. You push your plate away half-finished. A young man across the table raises his glass. To the art of tailoring, he says, with a grin too sharp. You think of the seamstress who sewed this gown, how carefully she stitched the neckline, the thread pulled taut with purpose. You wonder if she paused before finishing, if she measured the line and asked herself, will this feel like power or punishment? The answer, tonight, feels like both. After dessert, you rise for a walk through the gallery. Each step feels exposed. Not your legs, not your arms, just your presence, constantly assessed. Not what you say, but how you look saying it. You stop at a window and let the breeze cool your chest. The moonlight glints across your bare skin. It's beautiful in its way, but it's not yours. Not while every glance takes ownership of it. Somewhere behind you, laughter rises. Someone says your name. You pull the shawl from your shoulders and wrap it tight across your chest. Not because you're cold, because you've had enough. Back in your chamber, the moment the door closes behind you, your maid is already reaching for the fastenings. She knows the look on your face, tight-lipped, exhausted, overexposed. You raise your arms as she unhooks the bodice, and with each release, your ribs expand slightly, gratefully. When the final clasp gives way, the dress slinks down your frame like a sigh. You exhale fully for the first time in hours. The mirror catches your eye. You glance, only briefly, and see the faint marks the neckline has left behind. A soft line of redness across your chest where the edge pressed too firmly. Not quite a bruise, but a memory. Your maid folds the gown carefully. It's beautiful, she offers, uncertain. It's a costume, you reply, and I'm tired of playing the role. She nods, and that's enough. She doesn't ask more. You sink into your chair by the fire, pulling a blanket around your shoulders. The room is quiet, except for the soft hiss of burning logs and the distant hush of rain beginning to fall again. You think about how many nights like this you've lived through. Different gowns, different silhouettes, but the same calculation, always. How much skin to show, how much attention to absorb, how much of yourself to give away in order to be admired, just enough to be looked at, but never enough to be listened to. And it always comes back to design. Necklines that guide the eyes, bodices that bind the breath, laces that lift what needs to be noticed and conceal what must not. You remember a story you once heard, quietly passed among women during fittings, about a noble woman who sewed a hidden message into the lining of her dress, just beneath the bust. This chest belongs to no one. No one ever saw it. That was the point. You imagined doing the same, stitching your truth where only you would know it. Not a protest, exactly. Just a declaration. This body is mine. You rise and pace slowly across the room, your bare feet silent on the carpet. The wind rattles the window pane, and outside the courtyard is dark. From your wardrobe, you pull out a soft muslin nightdress. High neckline, loose sleeves, the kind of garment made for rest, not for display. You slip it on and feel your shoulders relax. Your collarbones vanish into fabric. Your skin, hidden, breathes. And for a moment, you remember what it's like to exist without being seen, to be whole without being witnessed, to be enough without being beautiful. You crawl beneath the blankets and curl onto your side. The fire dies down to embers. Your maid extinguishes the last candle, and in the quiet, no one is watching you. No one is measuring you. No one is naming your worth based on a neckline. You fall asleep clothed in comfort, not approval. And for once, the silence feels like peace. It begins with a whisper from the kitchen girl. Not gossip, not scandal. Just a question, barely above breath. as she fastens your shoes one morning. "Do you ever hide things in your dress?" You glance down. She's lacing the boots slowly, carefully, pretending not to have asked anything at all. The question is bold, but her voice is steady. You answer just as quietly. "Sometimes." She looks up then, surprised. You don't explain. You don't need to. Because every woman with a bodice tight enough to restrict her lungs also knows how to make space. Quiet space. Hidden pockets. Folds. Places where safety, dignity, or defiance might be tucked away. Today, you wear the plum wool gown. Simple cut. Modest flair. And yes, it has pockets. Real ones. Not stitched shut. Not fake flaps sewn to give the illusion of utility. But actual pockets, deep and secret, hidden beneath a layer of pleating near the hips. A gift from a rebellious dressmaker 2 years ago. You've never mentioned them aloud. Not once. Not even to your maid. You slip a letter into the left one. It's sealed. It's nothing illegal, just a note of encouragement to a friend who's been told she's too round for a court debut. You write that her voice matters more than her waist. You write that nothing lovely was ever meant to be quiet. Then you go down to the salon as usual. No one knows. All afternoon, you move through the rooms with a secret tucked into your skirt. You drink tea. You nod at passing conversation. You discuss flower arrangements for an upcoming garden banquet. And the letter is there, close to your body, carried like a promise. It's not the first thing you've hidden. There were the gloves sewn with coins when you visited the poorhouse, the scrap of paper with your sister's address during her exile, a vial of peppermint oil for a friend who fainted too often, a crust of bread once for a maid too proud to ask. Pockets have always been there for what you couldn't say, and yet they're disappearing. Every season, the tailors take them in more, shallow them, eliminate them altogether. They claim it ruins the line of the dress, that it adds bulk, that it breaks the silhouette. But you know the truth. It's because pockets are power. They let you carry more than your body. They let you bring something of your own into a world that often insists you arrive empty-handed. This afternoon you walk past a group of ladies discussing the latest French patterns. One says, "No pockets this year, thank heavens. So ugly on the hip." You smile politely and keep walking. Inside your gown, the letter presses gently against your side. You wonder how many others are hiding things too. That evening, just before retiring, you pass the letter off to a footman with quiet instructions. He never asks. He's delivered stranger things under your name. Back in your room, you remove the gown slowly, carefully, making sure nothing slips out. The pocket lies empty now, but it's there, waiting. You hang the dress on its form and smooth the fabric once, and smile. Because sometimes the most revolutionary part of your outfit isn't what they see, it's what they'll never find. You're not the only one with secrets sewn into seams. As the days pass, you start to notice little gestures among the women you know. The way Lady Branwen adjusts her bodice twice before sitting. She's hiding something in the lining, you're sure of it. The way the governess's skirt falls slightly heavier on one side. Perhaps a small book in the hem. Maybe even banned pages. Even the quietest girl in court, Eliza, the one who always blushes before speaking, has begun folding letters into the cuff of her sleeve. No one says anything aloud, but suddenly you see the network. A secret embroidery of intent running under every petticoat. One evening, you find yourself at a poetry recital in the East Parlour. A young man recites something in Latin, dramatic, pompous, too long. You sit with perfect posture, smiling faintly, while your fingers rest lightly against the pocket sewn beneath your overskirt. Inside it, a pressed flower. Nothing seditious. Just a simple violet from the garden you're no longer allowed to visit without a chaperone. You plucked it yesterday during a moment alone. It smelled like spring, even under frost. Now it lives against your hip, delicate, hidden, defiant. You're no radical. You haven't stood on balconies shouting speeches or stormed any gates. But this is quiet refusal. A refusal to be empty. After the recital, you pass Lady Branwen in the hallway. She stops you with a hand on your sleeve, leans in, lips barely moving. "In the third hem," she whispers, and then continues walking. You return to your room and check your new gown, the one delivered this morning from her tailor. Deep inside the third hem, a note. Folded paper, pressed flat. You don't open it yet. Not out of fear, but respect. Some pockets carry bread, others carry ideas. You realise something then. The most dangerous fashion isn't a plunging neckline or a 12-foot train. It's the dress that lets you carry something, and lets you decide what that something is. The next day you commission another gown. You give the tailor specific instructions. Wide cuffs, pleated underskirt, and one hidden pocket at the hip. Deep enough for a small diary, shallow enough to escape detection during a curtsy. He raises an eyebrow. What would a lady keep there? You smile. Her thoughts. He doesn't press further. When the gown arrives, you slip it on and immediately feel the difference. It's not the cut, not the colour, it's the space. That silent, waiting space sewn just for you. You tuck a note inside, just a line from a book you love. She carried her freedom like a secret. You wear it all day, no one notices, and that truly is the beauty of it. You've been summoned to the dressmaker's hall. Again. Only this time it's not for fittings or silks. It's because fashion has taken a turn, a sharp one, and the gossip is swirling like powdered wigs at a royal wedding. You step into the grand studio beneath the high-arched ceiling and pause. The room smells of starch, beeswax and ambition. Mannequins stand in rows like silent ghosts, each one draped in the newest monstrosity of design, the crinoline. The first one you see is absurd, a cage of metal hoops expanding from the waist like a birdcage stretched sideways. A small note hangs from the top frame, French patent, steel. You run your hand just above the surface, no need to touch. You can feel the menace in the air, a dress designed not to shape the body but to defy gravity itself, to turn a woman into an architecture project. Try it, says the modiste with pride. It's lighter than it looks. You're sceptical, but you're also polite. They slip the contraption over your head like a punishment in reverse. Hoops fall into place, skirts are lowered, and suddenly you've expanded by 3 feet on all sides. You try to sit. You cannot. You try to pass through a doorway. You get stuck, and you're only wearing the inner frame. Imagine once it's layered with petticoats and satin and bows. Imagine once you're expected to dance in it, to dine in it, to breathe in it. The modiste beams. It's modern, she says, so elegant. No more ugly belly bulges or unsightly thigh curves. You nod. You say thank you, and inside you imagine setting it on fire. Back at home your maid helps you remove it, breathless from laughing. It's like wearing a spinning wheel, she says, or a chicken coop. But it's not funny for long, because crinolines are becoming mandatory. At court, in salons, even in afternoon strolls through Hyde Park, skirts billow with wire frames. Women are learning to move sideways through corridors like crabs. Entire parlours must be rearranged to accommodate skirt width. There are injuries. A duchess falls trying to board a carriage. A servant gets caught in the spokes and nearly loses a finger. Someone faints from heat after 4 layers of wool are draped over metal rings. And worst of all, there's the fire, not a rumour. You hear it from a reliable source. A woman dressed in full crinoline stands too close to the hearth. Her skirt catches, and the flames spread up the cages like they were designed to burn. No one could reach her in time. Steel expands your silhouette, but it also expands the danger. Still, fashion marches forward. The Queen is said to approve. Paris applauds. Newspapers call it a revolution of elegance. But you know what it really is? A prison on stilts. And tomorrow, you'll be measured for your own. Because no one will dare show up uncaged. You stand on the small wooden box, arms lifted as the measuring tape snakes around your ribs. The dressmaker clucks her tongue. We'll need a double hoop for your stature, she says. Can't have the fabric collapsing on itself. Collapsing, you think. The only thing collapsing is your patience. Behind her, bolts of taffeta glint like weaponry. Coral, gold, sky blue. each role waiting to be shaped into the next weapon of femininity. A gown not for comfort, not even for beauty, but for compliance. You step down, wobbly on your feet. The hoop skirt you tried yesterday has left bruises where the boning pressed into your thighs. You didn't complain. No one does. That's the unspoken rule of the crinoline era. Suffer silently or suffer socially. You remember the first time you danced with a partner while wearing one. He extended a hand and then paused, bewildered, trying to find you somewhere inside the bell-shaped mass. Your hands touched, but your bodies never did. There was no closeness, no warmth, just the cold hum of wire between you. Later that night, you removed it and sat in front of your mirror. You looked smaller without it, not just physically, but existentially, as if your presence had been tied to that absurd circumference, as if taking it off meant fading. That's the power of the crinoline. It forces space around you while making you feel invisible inside. And the most bitter twist. Some women love it. They say it liberates them from corsets, that it frees their legs to move under the skirts, that the weight, once worn properly, disappears. But freedom is a strange word for something that prevents you from hugging your child without risk of poking them in the eye. Your aunt nearly knocked over a harpsichord last week trying to pass through the music room, and the rumours keep growing, of deaths in carriages, of women tripping downstairs, of skirts caught in train doors. A letter from Vienna speaks of a woman whose entire dress was sucked under the wheels of a street tram. It's not just fashion, it's infrastructure warfare. You learn to pivot sideways through doorways, to lower yourself gently like a folding chair, to sit without flattening the cage. Your maid adds a tiny hook on your parlour chair to suspend the hoops during tea. Every day becomes a negotiation between balance and spectacle. Still, you wear it. Because rebellion, at this moment in time, is as simple as choosing not to collapse emotionally inside your own metal shell. One evening, while watching the sunset from the drawing room, you tug your skirts forward and slide a thin book from beneath the final hoop. It's a banned essay on women's education. You read it by candlelight, and you think, not for the first time, that if we must wear cages, we might as well fill them with fire. The turn of the century whispers change, but your wardrobe doesn't get the memo. You wake up to another day of tightly laced possibilities. Only now, instead of crinolines, the fashion gods have delivered something new, the S-bend corset. They call it the health corset, which is rich, considering you nearly toppled over trying it on yesterday. Gone are the hourglass shapes of your mother's day. This one pushes your hips back, your chest forward, and your spine into a question mark. Your reflection doesn't show a woman. It shows a punctuation mark caught mid-sentence. The housemaid calls it the bird posture, but you don't feel like flying. You feel like you're about to tip over in a strong breeze. Still, this is the silhouette now gracing every fashion plate, every advertisement, every society column. Its Edwardian elegance, swan-like necks, pigeon-shaped chests, and waists so tiny they seem to vanish when you turn sideways. You sigh and brace yourself for the day. With each step, your torso pitches forward while your lower back strains to keep up. It's less walking, more teetering, like balancing a tray of porcelain teacups down a cobblestone path. Your aunt remarks at breakfast, "You look so graceful, dear." You reply, "I feel like a falling tree." Later that week, you attend a garden party. Everyone is wearing it. The new silhouette floats across the lawn like a parade of top-heavy swans. One woman faints, likely from heat, but someone jokes she bent down too quickly and snapped in half. The joke lands because it's just close enough to the truth. The S-bend corset promises liberation from the rib-crushing tight lacing of earlier eras. But in exchange, it gives you something else entirely: organ displacement. By pushing your pelvis back and chest forward, it creates that exaggerated curve fashionable in 1905, but also compresses your stomach in strange ways. You feel it in the way digestion slows, in how your breathing stays shallow, in how your voice changes subtly from lack of air. The doctor says it's psychological, that women are fainting because they're high-strung. You know better. You've watched your cousin collapse twice this week, once while reciting poetry, and once while reaching for the clotted cream. Both times she came to on a velvet settee, powdered and patted, as if it were a charming spell of feminine delicacy. But you saw the blue in her lips. You start reading medical leaflets in secret. One physician in Boston warns that S-bend corsets may cause nerve compression and uterine prolapse. You don't fully understand the terms, but the drawings alone are enough to make you sit very still. Meanwhile, corset companies double their ads. Support and freedom, they declare. Health and posture. One ad shows a woman playing tennis in her corset, smiling wide. You play tennis too, but only once. After 5 minutes, you couldn't feel your toes. You start to notice how chairs are designed with the corset in mind. Angled backs, no support for slouching. The entire world tilts forward with you, and the cruelest irony, it's all marketed as modern. You stare at yourself in the mirror, trying to decide if the pain behind your ribs is from the corset or from pretending you enjoy it. The S-bend has reshaped your movements, your breath, your sense of centre. You don't sit anymore. You perch. You don't walk. You glide forward with the chest of a proud pigeon and the lower back of a tired laundress. Your maid whispers that it's a respectable shape, that it shows you're refined, that women who refuse the bend are called vulgar, or worse, unfashionable. But your spine has begun to protest, quietly at first, just a stiffness after supper, then a deep ache by dusk. Then one morning, you can't bend over to pull on your own boots. You lie on your bed staring at the ceiling. The birds outside are chirping, and you wonder what it would feel like to breathe all the way down to your stomach, to laugh without feeling the sharp nudge of a steel busk reminding you to behave. You remember a dinner 2 nights ago. One of the debutantes tripped on her own train and fell forward, arms stiff, unable to catch herself. The corset had locked her torso like armour. They laughed, of course. But you saw the fear in her eyes before she hit the floor. There are new whispers in the parlours, that some women have started wearing looser stays when no one is watching, that under their gowns they're rebelling quietly with elastic waists and hidden buttons. You try it one afternoon, behind closed doors. No corset, just a chemise and a simple skirt. You walk the length of your room and nearly cry. Your lungs fill like sails. Your steps are bouncier, freer, even clumsy, but wonderfully so. You feel human. It lasts 10 minutes. Then there's a knock. Visitors. You must change. The corset is waiting, still warm from your body earlier. You sigh and lace it back on. Because while fashion may pretend to be progress, it's often just a more polished form of control. Later that night, you scribble a note in your diary. Someday, someone will wear clothes made for walking, not wilting, and she'll laugh with her whole lungs. A small dream, but a dangerous one, and it begins, not with revolution, but with one woman quietly loosening her laces. You're supposed to be excited, it's the 1920s now. Skirts are rising, corsets are loosening, and the word freedom is floating through the air like cigarette smoke in a jazz club. This is the age of the flapper, the garçon, the modern woman. But somehow, as you pull the new dress over your shoulders, you don't feel free. You feel erased. The mirror reflects a stranger with a flattened chest, a dropped waist and narrow hips. Everything that once defined your shape has been hidden, smoothed or disguised beneath layers of tubular fabric. The silhouette is the opposite of what came before, but no less demanding. Where once you were a bell, now you're a straight line. The irony hits you. You spent decades being crushed into curves, and now you're being told to disappear them altogether. At least the fabric breathes. The beaded silk dances when you move. The hem tickles your knees in a way that would have scandalized your grandmother. There are no hoops, no heavy skirts, no spine-warping corset. But that doesn't mean this dress is kind. Not when it comes with rules. You must be flat, slim, androgynous. Your bust is bound with soft bras or bandeaus. Your waist is dropped to your hips. If you've recently had a child, you'd better not show it. If your legs are thick, don't wear stockings in public. You're not sculpting yourself into a shape now. You're sculpting yourself into absence. You notice it in the way your mother frowns when she sees your hair bobbed short. "Where did your softness go?" she asks. You shrug. "Where did it ever get me?" The new dress moves with ease, but it still constricts just differently. You must keep your shoulders back and your elbows in, or the narrow cut will twist oddly. When you sit, you have to smooth it beneath you, or the fabric will pull tight and betray the roundness of your stomach. You think back to the crinoline, the corset, the S-bend. Each decade claims to liberate, but each time the goalpost shifts. You walk into the dance hall that evening surrounded by a sea of sleek silhouettes. Sequins glitter under the chandeliers, jazz spills from the gramophone, and every woman is dressed like she's just stepped out of a Vogue illustration. You blend in. That's the point now. Not to stand out as a woman, but to blur the edges of femininity into something sharper, bolder, cooler, but also smaller. Later that night, you climb the stairs to your apartment and catch your reflection in the hallway mirror. You pause. You look elegant and exhausted. Because dressing like you don't care takes more energy than anyone admits. You drape the dress over the back of your chair and sink into bed, the echo of jazz still thudding in your bones. Tonight, you danced with men in tuxedos and women in pearls, all of you pretending to be liberated. But your feet throb from the narrow T-straps, your ribs ache from the tight bandeau, and there's a blister blooming on your little toe, same as last week and the week before. You close your eyes and think of all the strange garments you've worn in your life, the cage-like crinoline that trapped your knees with each step, the steel corset that made you dizzy just from standing still, the bustles that forced you to sit on the edge of every chair like a guest overstaying her welcome, the S-bend that turned your spine into a decorative flourish, and now this, an elegant straitjacket disguised in chiffon. It makes you laugh, softly, bitterly. They said this was freedom. They said this dress was modern. But you can't help but notice that the freedom is always conditional. You can shed the wires and steel, yes, but only if you replace them with angles and expectations. You're free to move, but only within the silhouette dictated by the latest Paris pattern. At brunch tomorrow, they'll talk about hemlines and bob cuts, and how women are finally doing as they please. But you know the truth. Even rebellion has its uniform. And so you wonder, what would true freedom look like? Not just the absence of corsets or bustles, but the presence of choice. A dress made for running, a skirt you can garden in, fabric that doesn't whisper your flaws but hums with comfort, heels that don't demand silence, shoulders bare without shame, a body allowed to exist as it is, not as it must be shaped. You blink up at the ceiling and wonder if your granddaughter, if you ever have one, will know that feeling. Maybe she'll laugh at your old dresses. Maybe she'll keep one in a trunk, lift it carefully and say, "Can you believe women wore these?" And maybe, just maybe, she won't have to wear one herself. Because the strangest dresses in history weren't the ones that shocked the eye. They were the ones that smiled while stealing your breath. As you lie there now, safe and still, let yourself slowly drift away from the stiff seams and tight laces of the past. You don't need to carry the weight of all those dresses anymore. The rustling silks, the silent suffering, the whispered rules stitched into every hem. Those garments, for all their beauty, belong to another time, another set of expectations. Tonight, your body is your own. There are no corsets here, no hoops or bustles, no mirrored gazes judging your waistline. Just the quiet breath rising and falling in your chest, the softness of the blankets wrapped around you, and the gentle creak of time moving on. Let your thoughts settle like folded linen in a warm cupboard. Let each strange dress melt into memory, the absurd size, the whispered scandal, the aching ribs. They're part of a long, strange dream now, one where beauty was sometimes a burden and fashion a quiet form of obedience. But dreams fade, and morning always comes. Somewhere, in the not-so-distant past, a woman looked down at her feet, finally bare, finally steady, and walked forward, not to please others, but to feel the ground. maybe that's where true elegance begins. With comfort, with choice, with breath. Sleep easy now. The laces are untied, the fabric is soft, and you, just as you are enough.